Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, our Michigan Wolverines, the hottest team in the country. I mean, you talk about what we've done the last couple of weeks, beating Ohio State, now beating Alabama in the bowl game, where Alabama, Dill, they played most of their guys that are going to be going to the NFL draft. Michigan, without guys like Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, Will Johnson. I mean, that's four, at the very least, top 100 picks in the NFL draft not playing. You hold Alabama to 13 points. You have 5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. The thing that jumps out to me immediately is that it is starting to click with Wink Martindale in this defense. It kind of eerily reminds me of when Michigan brought Mike McDonald in a couple of years ago. There were some growing pains, early in the season. It's a little bit more of a complicated defense, much more complicated than what Don Brown was running. It took a couple of weeks, but it started to click. You're seeing the same thing happen with this Michigan defense under Wink Martindale, where early in the season you felt like this Michigan defense was kind of underperforming from its talent. You fast forward to the end of November, this Michigan defense going into year 2 under Wink Martindale, to me, it's going to be one of the best defenses in the country. And I think that's where you want to start with, even without some of the more dominant players in all of college football. Like, this Michigan defense was phenomenal against Alabama. I want to get into a few storylines, a few players that I think stood out as well before we get into it. As always, to the Michigan fans, let it fly in the comment section. It's been, Dill, I know the 2024 season has been a wild ride. The last 4 weeks of being a Michigan football fan, really starting with the Bryce Underwood commitment, it's been an absolute blast. And to the Michigan fans, y'all shown a ton of love to the boys. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, let's start on the defensive side of the football. I want to start with how gelled this unit seems like, towards the end of the year in 2024, where you go
And
back.
that's the operative word. Like, you look at what Lamar Morgan, especially, has done with the secondary.
Yeah.
Like, go back to that Washington game, even the Texas game, just like how much space there was in the back end. And it's kind of a zone heavy scheme that Wink Martindale's been running pretty much all year. And you see how much better they've gotten with spacing. Like, again, if the Alabama was going to make plays today, aside from a couple of those like leveled vertical throws that they had at the end of the second half, like, they really just didn't have much space. Like, they would have to make perfect throws really consistently. And that to me is the biggest thing, because that's a young secondary that took leaps and bounds in terms of their progress over the course of the year with Lamar Morgan.
100%. Lamar Morgan has done a great job. Wink Martindale has done a great job. And then scheming up in the front seven as well. I mean, it kind of reminded me of how it went with Alabama in the Rose Bowl last year, too. Like, that front five for Alabama, you just can't block some of these guys. Like, as much as Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, they were awesome. Know who else has been freaking awesome all year? Guys like Derek Moore and guys like TJ Guy. They're coming back. It's one of the best pass rushing duos that you're going to see in the country in 2025. Now, Dill, to me, the biggest storyline is what you saw from the interior of this defensive line, which is still by far the biggest question mark for me heading into 2025. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, you probably can't replace that kind of dominance and production, but you can have a little bit more depth on the defensive line in 2025. Etta, I am very high
That,
on
that
what
was
he
the
can
best
be.
game we've seen him play by a mark. Like, and again, his ability, because like, say what you want about Alabama's pass protection, it's not been particularly great all year. It's been an offense that when they get rolling, they can move guys like Etta holding up really nicely. Trey Pierce was not
He
only
was great.
holding up, he was being disruptive, getting in the backfield. Like you said it, like Etta, he was kind of a guy that feels like he's going to be a really pivotal part in terms of like how deep and good this Michigan defensive line can be. That's the type of game you need from him, where consistently standing up against double teams, being able to shed blocks, makes it like do some things that, again, you're going to need to replace two absolute
Like
monsters.
Tyler Booker, I think might be a first round NFL draft pick. Jaden Roberts, one of the better guards in the country. Parker Brailsford, one of the better. That interior offensive line for Alabama, especially in the run blocking department, they're dogs. And I thought Etta and Trey Pierce did a phenomenal job holding their own, and both of those guys are only going into year 3.
I
Like you're,
want to ignore Ike Aluna too. I thought Ike Aluna,
yeah,
like a guy who's sneaky again, hadn't really come up as like a big time recruit or anything, but a guy who gets in there and really battles and bangs with guys and plays like really
yeah.
sound football. Like he's not going to be a draft pick, I don't think, but he's a guy who I think gives you a really good depth reps from that inside.
Inoue is probably the guy that I'm looking for during this offseason. Because you look at Inoue, we knew he'd be a slow burner when he was coming out of high school. Just a traitsy guy that needed to become a better football player. Now you combine that kind of prospect with he's also making a position change. We thought he'd be a heavy-handed edge rusher. He's putting on some weight, moving to the inside. I made this a couple of days ago, and I'll probably say it again here. Kind of reminds me of like the David Ajabo arc, where it's like you don't really hear of Inoue. He came in as, I think, the highest ranked recruit for Michigan in the 2023 class. He's kind of slowly building, and I think that breakout year, similar with David Ajabo, where it's like his presence has arrived. I think you might see a very clear Inoue being a dominant dude in 2025. Dill, I'll give you some credit here. Jaden Hood at backer thought all the linebackers were pretty dang good. Ernest Hausman, getting him back
Huge.
is huge. Dill, Jaden Hood, he's got another year of eligibility. I thought he played some really good football too. And I don't know how much he's going to play next year because you got guys like Jimmy Rolder and Cole Sullivan. But the depth at linebacker, especially if you're talking about kicking Jay Sean Barham down to edge next year, feel really damn good about where Michigan sits there as well.
Again, I see like Michigan's been rolling their linebackers around. Again, Jay Sean Barham's certainly a guy that it sounds like they want to do something a little bit different with. Probably will play some, I'm guessing, to be a bit more of a hybrid, obviously.
Yeah.
But I look like, yeah, you're in good shape, I think. And again, Ernest Hausman, the fact that he's ascended into a guy, if he plays like that all year next year,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him be a first round draft pick. Is that
The last two games you've seen from Ernest Hausman, Ohio State and Alabama, this is his two best games he's played in his Michigan career. Yeah, and then I guess the last person on defense, Zeke Berry. I'm just really intrigued in terms of what we do with him. He can do it all. Like, I mean, you could play him at safety, you could play him in nickel, you could play him boundary cornerback. I want to see him find a home in 2025 because I think that's how you maximize him. He's awesome. I give him so much credit for kind of
And
just
I feel
stepping
like
in.
that's going to depend on what emerges around him. Because I look like Jair Hill again, a
Dog.
really good game for him. And again, really good boundary wideouts. Guys like Ryan Williams, guys who have made plays on a lot of really good teams, didn't really have a ton of space downfield. Like Jair Hill emerging into a very clear cornerback one in my mind. Then it's going to be what do you fill in around it? Because Zeke Berry, it's tough for me to even say what he's better at because he's played
Awesome
unbelievable
at
ball at the
boundary.
boundary
Yeah.
spot. I would have thought it was nickel. His body type looks like a nickel, but he's playing elite football at the boundary, or not playing really good football at the boundary corner.
Yeah, you can. It's you see the pieces coming together, and you talk about potentially Rod Moore coming back and all the talent that Michigan's bringing in this 2025 high school class in the secondary. Lamar Morgan's going to be a kid in a candy store. Like it's good. It's hard to see this Michigan secondary not being a really good unit in 2025. Offensive side of the football. Look, we knew it's Jordan Marshall, right? Like as frustrating as the scheme is of the offense, we knew this is the last game of seeing it like this.
Thank God.
But Dill, two guys for me. Andrew Sprague at right tackle. That's a good Alabama front seven. I wouldn't say Andrew Sprague went out and dominated this football game, but he certainly didn't look like a true freshman going up against a really, really good front seven. He, to me, is a bona fide starting caliber tackle next year, which makes you feel really good. And you talk about Andrew Babaloa coming in behind and potentially Ty Haywood. This offensive line's getting back to where we, quite frankly, as Michigan fans, expect it to be.
And even today, the fact that they're able to run the ball like decently well is almost like a testament to, like, again, was it like pretty on offense? No. And I think like too many negative plays made, but like when you run a scheme that you actually can't complete a forward pass, like, and you can still run the ball relatively well, where at least you can get a couple first downs and grind down on some teams. I think this offensive line might be a little underrated because this scheme does them absolutely no favors in terms of doing what they want to do and running the ball. Like
100% agree with that. Like you can get mad at the run game all you want when you're running into 8-man boxes because it's no secret we're not going to throw a pass 10+ yards down the field. The teams are going to do that to you. You go back and you kind of fast forward to 2025 when ideally we have a downfield passing attack. You're going to start seeing some lighter boxes. And I think this offensive line will be able to really road grade and get that run game going. Now, we buried the lead here. Jordan Marshall, we were hearing the buzz all year, and we know we got a good one. Him and Justice Haynes, to me, next year are going to be such a dynamic running back room. And, you start having that conversation of the things you can do to make Bryce Underwood really, really comfortable. As much as you want to talk about adding pass catchers, which we expect Michigan to do, this is still a program that Sherrone Moore is the head coach of, and you still know what the identity is going to be. And the best thing you can do for a true freshman quarterback, give him a run game to lean on. To me, it's so hard to seeing this running game not being good. Dill, what I love most about Jordan Marshall, as a true freshman, you see a lot of running backs who are young and they kind of like to dance a little bit and not really attack the line of scrimmage because you're used to being the best football player on the field. I can do whatever I want. And when you get to the collegiate level, it's a lot more, hey, we got to press the line of scrimmage and get downhill. Jordan Marshall, he's a no-nonsense back. He wants to press downhill, but what I love about him, he runs behind his pads, runs extremely hard, deals with contact well, but when it's time to bounce it out or when it's time to get to the second level, you see that added juice that, Kalel Mullings was a hammer for us, but when he got to the second level, there was an element of him not having that home run capability. Jordan Marshall has that. That's what makes him, to me, going to be an elite running back for Michigan. And again, him and Justice Haynes, man, I'm fired up about what they can look like in 2025.
In like the twitchy explosiveness, that's kind of what I look at. Like,
Yeah.
like when he gets going, he gets going. That was probably the one issue with Kalel. Is Kalel, when he got a chance to kind of get himself rolling, could move and could hit some big plays, but he wasn't a guy who'd go from like 0 to 60 particularly quick. Like Jordan Marshall, you saw in some
Dono could do that. Don Edwards could do, but then Don Edwards didn't give you the picking up the ugly yards. Like there were a lot of should be 2nd and 10s that were 2nd and 7s because Jordan Marshall's falling forward and dealing with contact. That kid's going to be a stud. And a lot of people were saying, hey, why are we going out and getting Justice Haynes when we got a guy like Jordan Marshall? Look, Michigan's going to want to run the football a lot. Like keeping Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall fresh for 4 quarters of a football game, that's going to be a lot to deal with if you're an opposing defense. I got 3 more names I'll throw at you. So we talked about Jordan Marshall. We talked about Andrew Sprague. Freddie Moore, I think, has some juice, man. And it's juice in a couple of different ways. One, you saw a really nice contested catch where he showed some nice body control, some obviously really nice hands when the weather was not so good. But he's also a guy that when you see him get the football in space, gives you some real juice. So a shout out Freddie Moore. I think my other shout out is Hogan Hansen. It's a quiet day. It's not going to show up on the box score. I like the way he looks, man. And my last shout out, Marlon Klein. He has
a tight end. I think we all knew he was the athlete, but man, he blocks really, really well in line. Yeah. Him and Sprague working together, him and Link working together a couple times. Like, did a really good job moving guys around and being able to run that like physical style Michigan wants to do it.
Yeah, Marlon Klein taking that jump as an inline blocker, kind of similar to how Colston Loveland started his career as just an elite pass catcher, but kind of morphed into that complete tight end that you can attach in the line of scrimmage and get some good reps out in the run blocking department. Marlon Klein's going there too. Yeah, I mean, I think the way I'll close it out is there's a lot of buzz going into 2025. This is a very hot team. Okay, last point I got. I'll stop wasting your time here. The culture of this Michigan program is unmatched, man. Like it could be so easy for this Michigan team, especially just in the back half of the season in general, just kind of throw in the towel. When it started raining, it was very clear which team wanted to play and which team didn't. And I give Sherrone Moore getting the crowd going, and then that kind of permeated within this Michigan program and roster today. It feels like it's in the right spot from a culture standpoint.
And this would have been such an easy year to quit on, like, because it was going so poorly. And again, you had such a huge deficiency at quarterback that, like, I could see kind of it being a problem with the rest of the team. Like, how do you even get up to play when you're having quarterback play that's probably as bad as we've seen at the D1 college level in years? Like, being able to keep everyone kind of rolling and again, finish the way they did, because it was ugly early on. It was, like, very frustrating to watch. But then you grind out a big one against Ohio State clearly. And then you go, like, usually I don't necessarily care, like, bowl game wins, whatever. But, like, to go beat an Alabama team that, like, was pretty much playing full strength, as you said, like, and Michigan being down pretty much their top 4 players, like really, really huge game for them.
They're lucky they didn't put us in the playoffs. Say that much. Playing our best football, baby. All right, we'll get out of here on that. Appreciate you guys rocking with it again. To the Michigan fans, going to be a very fun offseason. Got a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully some transfer portal commitments as well. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.